live on a Monday. Flip the calendar. It is March. It's the 3rd of March. Welcome inside the vault for a Ravens Lunch Hour live stream. I'm Bobby Trossett, as always, joined alongside Sarah Ellison. It's great to be with you guys post NFL Combine. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Manta Sleep, and we will examine several things over the course of the next hour, including a viral tweet, or should I say a cryptic tweet from Ravens pass rusher Adafe Oweh, and whether or not that's significant because of the fact that it happened at the tail end, Sarah, of the NFL Combine, where, as we know, everybody's there. Organizations from top down are there. So it just begs the question, what's going on with that? Aside from that, the wide receiver market certainly is picking up some steam. There was plenty of I don't know if blockbuster is the right word, but notable moves made over the weekend. So we'll take a look at that. Also examine a false narrative about Ravens owner Steve Bisciotti, and also some combine notes before we finish things up coming up over the next hour or so. Before we dive in, do you remember what you and I both agreed upon prior to starting this commitment, which is daily, year-round live broadcasting? We both looked at each other and we were like, man, we want life flexibility. You wanted flexibility for your 4 kids. I wanted flexibility for just life in general. And if the last 2 weeks haven't been a prime example of that, of why we wanted it, I don't know what would be. Last week was tremendous in Indianapolis. And then I just drove this weekend down to St. Pete. So I'm doing a remote month of March. That's where I'll be. Nobody needs to be concerned about my whereabouts. I'm here. Tilly is behind me. We have an audience of 1. We have got plenty of you out there virtually, but looking forward to it. I know you'll have a flexible month coming up as well.
I will. And, I grew up watching Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, which was the game show. I know there's a cartoon with it, but the game show. And we could just change that song to Where in the World is Robert Francis Trossett, because the last couple months you definitely have not been in Baltimore very often. You've been all over the East Coast.
Man, and I feel like I haven't even got enough. It's like I get a little taste of it, right? And hopping flights and driving down in the Bronco with Tilly. There's something fun about the off season and the flexibility that you and I know we both feel privileged to have. So with that, let's dive into today's content. On your way in, please like the video if you haven't already done so. Hit that notification bell so you can be notified of when we're dropping our daily live content. And please subscribe as well. We're coming up on 24,000 subscriptions here inside the vault. Inside the Twitter sphere, the X sphere over the weekend, Sarah, was this Adafe Oweh taking center stage. And let's just, for starters, he's not Marlon Humphrey on social media, Sarah. He kind of keeps a lower profile. And as you can see by what you've provided here with a screenshot, the last repost, meaning the last time he actually showed up on his timeline for a tweet up until this weekend, was November of 2022. So
it's been a minute.
Just keep that in mind when we kind of examine what it is that's happening here. Adafe's first tweet was a peace sign emoji. And not long after that, 4 hours later to be exact, man, I hope not, ... but God's plan always wins. So, cryptic to say the very least, Sarah. This comes again at the tail end of the NFL Combine. Adafe's 5th-year option, we know, was exercised and picked up last year. Had a career year in terms of production for Baltimore. He was their former first-round pick out of Penn State. What'd you make of this?
Well, my first reaction is I wanted to see the entertainment that would surely ensue and always does ensue when a player, whether it's a Ravens player or anybody else in the NFL or across professional sports, as I always enjoyed the entertainment of the speculation of what this means. And Bobby, a lot of times fans will get mad at other fans for even speculating that it could be Ravens related. And I would say, well, how do they not do it? How do they not? When a football player that hasn't tweeted since almost 3 years ago, and his last tweets were Ravens related. Okay, that's what they were. And so the very first one that comes up in almost 3 years is a peace sign emoji. Of course, they're wondering, wait, does this mean you're not going to be in Baltimore for long? And I'll add this. players absolutely know what they're doing, and maybe they want to be entertained just like me. Because after that tweet took off, and by the way, it had almost 200,000 views for an account that hasn't done anything for 3 years. So it picked up speed for a reason. And he knows there's over 146 comments in it, retweeted 231 times. And the vast majority of those that were, quote, retweeting or commenting were saying, Adafe, are you saying this is the end? And then 4 hours later, instead of clarifying, he offers a second cryptic tweet that says, man, I hope not, as you said, but God's plan always wins. He knows what he's doing. Players know what they're doing. They know that fans and media and podcasters like ourselves are going to speculate what this means. And so what does it mean? It very well could have nothing to do with the Ravens, and it could do something with the Ravens. We don't know, and that's why it's a cryptic tweet. I will say this, if it does have something to do with football, he is locked in for 2025. Once you exercise that 5th-year option, you can't undo that. The franchise tag, you can tag him and then you can withdraw the tag. In this case, with the 5th-year option, you cannot do that. Now, they could trade him. As you said, this was put out during the combine when GMs and agents and everybody's talking to each other. So that added to the speculation. Or maybe they're trying to get a long-term deal. Because again, at the combine, that's usually when this happens. And so they could have been talking and thinking about a long-term deal. And so maybe he very well stays put in 2025, but he may have not been happy that after 2025, or a little sad, or, he says, I hope not, in peace sign. Maybe he's saying peace after 2025. We don't know, but he knows exactly what he's doing. And he's sparking off all this speculation.
Yeah, no question. To your point, in Indianapolis, I felt like I got a great feel for the business operation. And because everyone is within such close proximity of each other, for example, during Harbaugh and DaCosta's media availabilities last week, Eric kind of hinted at, hey, we're going to be speaking with Ronnie's people this week. And so that's all to say, like you just alluded to, there could very well have been conversations between Adafe's representation and Eric's, and meaning the Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
On top of this, we also have to remember that Adafe could be viewed as, despite the outside linebacker room being not exactly deep in Baltimore, I know they had 2 double-digit sack getters this past season.
And they actually do have good depth. They don't have a game record.
Yes.
Yes.
Depth-wise, well, how many are they deep here? So Tavius is considered an outside linebacker. So it'd be KVN, Adafe, Tavius, Ajabo, and who am I missing? Is there a is there a 5th?
Well, Harrison went back and forth, but he's a free agent. But
okay.
I mean, they're
you know what? I am missing somebody. Adisa Isaac. So
okay.
they have 5 outside linebackers right now. But yes,
which is
to your
plenty.
point, no headliner, right?
Yes.
No headliner, despite KVN and Adafe having very productive sack seasons, hitting the double-digit category. Where I'm going with that is Adafe could be viewed as to some as maybe having untapped potential. We know he is a freak of nature. He's 6'5", 251. The motor is out of this world. And since Chuck Smith arrived as the outside linebackers coach, Adafe continues to ascend. And like we've mentioned a couple times now, he's coming off his career season. He had 10 total sacks, 39 tackles, 23 quarterback hits. And we all watched it. Yes, we want him to get to the quarterback more often. And it always seems more often than not that he's just a half step and he's right there. Mm-hmm. But he could be viewed, Sarah, as, and maybe this is just the last portion of the conversation from my mind, is he could actually be viewed as somebody that has untapped potential and will be an attractive get in the trade market for an outside linebacker needy team.
Oh, for sure. Like, again, while I wouldn't call him a game wrecker, he's for sure the best Ravens pass rusher. I mean, KVN is right there, but KVN's at the back end of his career. And to your point, this is an up and comer. He hasn't reached the expectations of a typical first round pick. Not disputing that. Also not saying he's a game wrecker, but the bar isn't necessarily high with the rest of the guys in the room to say that somebody else is just straight up better. So he's the best. So, to your point, if they want to trade him, could he garner, some pretty good draft resources? I think so. I think so. When you're coming off a double digit, you got guys projected to make more than he's going to make on the 5th-year option with far fewer sacks. And one could argue, well, it's more the system and they're scheming it up and he's got Dr. Rush and Matabike's in the middle and all that. That's all fine. But at the end of the day, he had double-digit sacks. He's young and he's on a 5th-year option, which is cheaper than what you could get with some of these free agents that are older and are going to be more expensive. So would he be attractive? For sure. And so would the Ravens do that? I don't know why they would, unless there's some sort of blockbuster pass rusher on the other side of this, because we're already saying they need a game wrecker. So you don't want to take less away. So unless you're trading for another pass rusher, I don't know why the Ravens would trade him, which is why it just makes this tweet even more cryptic.
Yeah. You just refer to him as the Ravens' best pass rusher.
Is he not?
No. I'm saying that's. It feels weird to say that because
he's not a game wrecker.
Because he's been let's call him a late bloomer. He actually had a really successful rookie season, if memory serves. Not statistically, but he was someone where everybody that offseason going into his sophomore year was like
Chiefs game. Remember that?
Oh yeah, the strip of Mahomes is if memory is helping me out here. But no, I think you're correct that he is their best pass rusher. But where I was going with that is, unless there is something big on the other end,
why
all of
would
a sudden,
you do that?
Kyle's not going to be here in 2 years, maybe, unless he continues to show this resurgence. And Ajabo might not be on the 53-man roster next fall. You really like Tavius Robinson. I think they like him a lot as someone who can continue to develop. You don't know what you have in Adisa Isaac, who we barely saw. He had a cup of coffee last year, the rookie. So yeah, you'd be flirting with fire, Sarah, if there's not somebody blockbuster on the other end there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, you'd be flirting with disaster. But anyway, so that's that. I don't know. Listen, like I said, he knows what he's doing. He's inviting speculation. So that's what we did pretty thoroughly. As we said, he's on that 5th-year option already, so he's under contract. And speaking of 5th-year options, Bobby, the NFL released the payments it would take to franchise players to use the 5th-year option and to tender some guys. So obviously the franchise tag doesn't matter to the Ravens this year. There's nobody that that comes to mind that the Ravens would want to use the tag on, but they do have 2 rookies who have been phenomenal and who weren't late bloomers, who came in, stepped in, and made an impact both on the Ravens offense and defense from the moment they were drafted. And of course, I'm talking about Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum. So because both these guys have made 2 or more Pro Bowls, and Hamilton, obviously an All-Pro. Did Linderbaum ever make All-Pro? I don't think so.
Don't believe so.
But they've both made Pro Bowl multiple times. And because of that, their 5th-year options are even more expensive than they would have been otherwise. So for Hamilton, if the Ravens use the 5th-year option, he will count $18.6 million against the cap next year. And Linderbaum, because they don't separate out these figures for tackles and guards and centers, they just lump it as an offensive line, and those tackles are driving those prices up. Linderbaum, because of that offensive line figure and his 2 Pro Bowls, will be $23.5 million for your center. That is the Ravens cannot use the 5th-year option on both of these guys and commit over $40 million for these 2 next year. So the Ravens have a couple of options. They could do a 5th-year option for one and not the other and try to go ahead and sign one to a long-term deal. Then also, as Jeff Zrebeck pointed out, Bobby, because Linderbaum's 5th-year option is so big, look how close it is to just being a franchise tag. And the franchise tag is the average of the top 5 players at your position. In this case, it includes tackles. So to franchise tag him next year, it'd be $24 million. So it'd be 23.4 to tag him. And like I just said, it's 23.4 to use the 5th-year option. It's almost identical. So what Jeff suggests, which is not a bad idea, because you cannot remove the 5th-year option, but you can the tag, which offers you more flexibility. If you can't get him under a long-term contract initially, you could try to use that franchise tag. So those are the updates on those numbers there.
And I have an update for you. Not that this is crazy, nothing crazy, and I wouldn't call it, massive breaking news, but being that there was some interaction or some smoke between the Ravens and this player within the last couple years, I'll just share it with you real quick.
Mm-hmm.
The Eagles are releasing 6-time Pro Bowl corner Darius Slay. Schefter reports it. If he is designated a post-June 1 release, Philadelphia will save over $4 million against the cap. So what was it? Was it last offseason or the one prior to that where
it might have been prior, but within the last 2 years, it feels like for sure.
Yeah. So he gets himself a Super Bowl title and looks to be a potential cap casualty here ahead of the new league year beginning next year. And he is now, how old is Darius now? 34. He wants to play one more year, he says.
Now, this is one you kind of said, this might not be huge news, which it might not be. But this is one, what it also could be. How old did you say he was?
34, and he says he wants to play one more year.
34 and wants to play one more year. This is why, to your point, the reason why this garners a little bit more attention than maybe, Joe Schmo's free agent being cut is because, like you said, the Ravens and Darius were reportedly very close to a deal within the last 2 years. And Darius Slay went on a podcast. Does he have his own podcast? It might have been his own podcast, but he was on a podcast and he said that he was like this close to signing with the Ravens and then last minute went back to the Eagles. To me, people have been asking me, could the Ravens get this corner? Could they get that corner? I do believe the Ravens are going to draft corners again. However, this is a guy that it's like, yeah, if he's cool with it because he's got his ring, okay, he's got his ring. He almost already signed with the Ravens. The Ravens are a place where you are in Super Bowl contention as long as Lamar Jackson is healthy. That's some nice depth, as long as he's cool with realizing he's depth. But an injury goes down, you feel pretty good about a Darius Slay, and he shouldn't be too expensive given his age. And there's already a connection there with the Ravens. Now, the Ravens may say, no, thanks. We basically were close last time and you snubbed us. But that may not be the case, because if you end up getting better money from the Eagles last minute, then the Ravens always respect that, right? They wouldn't have a problem with that. But to me, this is absolutely one to watch, given that history and given the price tag, the low price tag he could have, and the depth he could provide if he's okay with that role. We don't need another Eddie Jackson who's unhappy with the role. So you got to say up front, hey, Wiggins is our guy, Marlon is our guy, and maybe whoever else they draft, maybe, and we're going to give TJ Tampa all the opportunity in the world. But if you want to be here as depth, we can make something happen.
There you have it. Darius Slay. He will be a designated post-June 1 release, by the way. Schefter's clarified that. So Philadelphia is going to save over $4 million against the cap. And a decorated corner has just become available, Sarah, a week before the upcoming new league year.
And by the way, with the 2 rookies they just drafted last year, Cooper Kupp and
Cooper.
No. Sorry.
He's been on our mind. We were asking the insiders about him last week. Okay, Cooper DeJean, though.
Cooper DeJean
is the rook who just had the pick 6 in the Super Bowl from Iowa. And then, of course, Quinyon Mitchell. But, yeah, to your point, of course
they're letting him go.
I think Darius saw the writing on the wall for sure. And
probably has no, I would hope he has no ill will when you see two rookies coming in like that and having themselves a year.
This is a big name. Says he wants to play one more year. Would it make sense for the Ravens? Yes, it'd be maybe, just maybe it'd be depth, or maybe he'd say, hey, I could be Brandon Stevens' replacement. Come on, guys. I want to go back to back with you guys. There was a familiarity. There was a connection within the last couple of years. I went and got my Super Bowl. I feel like I got more to prove. We'll see. You're having some fun with the live chat.
The chat's making me laugh. Cooper the Gene Cup.
Oh, my goodness. Before we continue, this episode is brought to you by our friends at Manta Sleep. It's the official sleep mask partner of the Vault. And I got to tell you, Sarah, I'm on the road, as I've already mentioned. And my cousin has a white noise machine in his room. And I think it might have put me over the edge. I'm ready for a white noise machine. I slept incredibly well last night.
Ooh.
And it reminded me that Manta has its own Manta white noise machine. So there you have it. The world's most effective noise blocking system. One of the many features that they have available. One of the many products that they have available to you at mantasleep.com. If you find something you like, maybe it's the sleep mask section as well. The sound mask with the built-in Bluetooth feature, certainly a popular one. The Manta Sleep Mask Pro, which is what we both have with us at all times. The silk and the original sleep masks, along with the weighted mask, the cool mask, the steam mask, and the kids mask, all great options. And like I said, if you find something at checkout, you can use our discount code VAULT10. That's VAULT10. That'll get you 10% off your next purchase. These sleep masks enhance your sleep. They give you true 100% blackout for deeper sleeps. They've got C-shaped eye cups for unbeatable side sleep comfort. Zero pressures applied to your eyelids or lashes. And advanced materials are built in with ventilation for unmatched breathability. So continued thanks to Manta Sleep for sponsoring our channel during the NFL offseason and all year long. And you can get started today by visiting the show notes, where we have a direct link to our URL, or there's also a pinned comment right now in the live chat. So
two comments on Manta, which I'm sure our sponsor wouldn't mind if we go a little bit long on the ad here. Number one, so my husband was out of town last night, so both my girls were like, Mom, can we sleep with you? So I'm like, okay, that's fine. And they bring in their white noise machine. I don't have a problem sleeping. When I go to sleep, when I lay down, I'm out. And I sleep well throughout the night. However, they like their brown noise machine. And there is something like very comforting about it. And again, this is as a person who sleeps pretty soundly, but they brought it in last night and I was like, okay, all right, I like this. And then we also had some dinner guests over last night. They were asking about the show, and somehow we got on a discussion about sponsors. And my daughter London is like realizing that, she's like, wait, you talk about us? And I'm like, yeah, we always say, which sleep mask do you like? She's like, well, you have to tell the truth, Mom. Just because it's an ad, you have to tell the truth. And I'm like, okay, this is what we say about you. I say that you like the silk sleep mask. And she's like, oh, wait, yeah, that's true. I love that silk mask. And she did wear it last night in bed. So check them both out for adults and kids. My kids love the stuff. Sleep masks and the white noise machine. Definitely something to go check out.
The truth and nothing but the truth inside this show. We know how it goes. Maybe a white lie here and there for the betterment of others or the betterment of a situation. Maybe that's just me. I like a good white lie. I know it's not you, but I like a good white lie when it's, how should I say this? I'm going to get quoted here. I like a good white lie when it's harmless. I don't look for white lying. But I like a good white lie when it's harmless.
Yeah.
And maybe beneficial to something.
Oh, for sure, for surprises. My kids all know this.
Yeah.
For sure, for surprises. I got to lie to you to throw you off the scent.
That's a great motherly answer right there. I love that. Hey, one correction, just a small little one, because the chat helped me out with it, and then I went and looked it up. Adafe Oweh stripped Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that rookie. In that rookie.
I just know it was like in a big moment.
Big moment. Not Mahomes. It was Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So thank you, chat. Thank you, Google. And let's continue the conversation, partner.
Real quick, just because we're talking about Slay. Dream says Slay is the typical Ravens. He absolutely is, which is why I wanted to talk about it for a little bit. Slay is the typical Ravens signing.
Yeah.
Elite players past their prime when the draft has younger options, although I still think they could draft him. like Mello Dotson or Quincy Riley.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's why I actually brought it up, and then you
Yeah.
wanted to expand it a little bit further, which I think was smart. So,
Yeah.
especially because of, again, what we've already noted, and you were right. That's exactly what it was. He was on his podcast, and that's how it came to be that the Ravens were making an offer for him. So, just within the last couple of years. So, appreciate you, Queon. And man, speaking of the draft and whatnot, and particularly the 2022 draft class, being that you just shared those options that
Yeah.
exist for Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum because of their performance levels. Here's a look at what EDC did back in 2022.
Hey, Bobby, I added these green circles and red X's for those that I feel like he hit versus missed. Now, not all hits are equal. Okay. We know there's singles and doubles and triples and home runs and grand slams. But holy crap, this 2022 draft. I would say a grand slam is like Hall of Fame worthy. So we can't go there early yet with Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum. But when you have your first two draft picks, both becoming multiple Pro Bowlers on their contract year, those are home runs. Those are home run hits. David Ojabo, swing and a miss. Maybe that'll change this year, but up to this point, swing and a miss. Travis Jones, what would you say? Double?
I think that
Triple? Double?
the ball might
It's a
still
double.
be in play somewhere in the outfield. It might be careening off of the back wall, and it's still TBD. Like, this is a player that I could feel like you might look at him the way you look at big baby Brandon Williams when it's all said and done. Like, Travis Jones is a heck of a player.
He is. He is. So you're saying it. Would you say at least a double?
Right. I'm saying like it could be more than a double.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. At least. Okay. Daniel Fatalele. This is an interesting one because obviously he hasn't been looked upon in a high esteem, including by us. Although I have to admit, for me, I just thought he wasn't going to get better. I was ready to yank him after that Raiders game, and the Ravens stuck by him. But when you have a guy that converted from right tackle to right guard, and he started all 17 games, and he's projected to be the 17-game starter again, that's got to be a double, even if you don't like him, right? That he's starting all those games.
Yeah, I'm also being distracted because I want everybody to know that looks like the graphic on the bottom there, like, don't pay attention to the rounds. All the rounds are messed up for the most part.
Oh, yeah,
Especially on the back end. So we're just looking at the player. This is not our graphic. It looks like it's a Ravens wire graphic. And whoever put this together completely botched the round. So anyway, just to be clear, we're looking at the player, 3 years into his career, basically.
Right.
We're not looking at the round. So just
look at all the 7th rounders they put him in.
Yeah, I'm like, well, that would be a pretty legendary. And who knows? I don't know what the exercise they were doing was or whatever, but this is obviously not accurate. So, but yeah, I'm with you.
Okay.
And then clearly, Jalen Armour Davis, unfortunately, really due to availability or lack thereof, it just was not a hit.
It's a miss. I'd say Charlie was a single.
Here's the thing about Charlie. It's hard to assess because of his peers that he's been behind.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is almost we haven't seen enough of him like the way we have with Travis, right? To be like, oh, it's still up to be determined. But I think his ceiling could very well be high, but he'll end up being a late bloomer, not because of performance, but because of what was out of his control. And that was the team that he was drafted to.
Right.
Stout, I might have a half red, half green circle.
Okay.
Because he's left some to be desired. I know we were spoiled. The Ravens were spoiled for a long time with Sam Cook, who's still involved in the organization, by the way. But Stout, to me, especially this year, would be half green, half red. I just thought he was very, very, very inconsistent with flipping fields.
Talk about another one that's not totally finished yet is Isaiah Likely. Like, he's at least a double, but could be so much more. But who knows, because maybe he's a triple, but it could be so much more. But because he's also had Mark Andrews ahead of him, that's like another one that it's like still not fully written. But if he goes off, if he gets the chance to be tight end 1 this year, and we don't know if he will, or at least if he is, he'll share it with Mark Andrews. But I mean, and if we want to know when he was drafted, that was actually the 4th round. So Daniel Fa'alele to Isaiah or to Demarius Williams, it was all 4th round.
That was the year they had what felt like 15 of them in the 4th.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He just 4th rounder after 4th rounder, and so many hits there too. And then finally in the 6th round, running back Tyler Batty.
Beatty, yeah,
Batty. That didn't work out. But woo, what a draft class. And it does help, Bobby, when you're drafting 14th instead of 27 or behind, which they usually are at.
Certainly.
But,
certainly. Yeah, right. That was the year because Lamar didn't finish 2021, right? So they land in the middle of the pack at 14, to your point. Go get Kyle, trade Marquise on draft day to pick up a second first rounder in Linderbaum. Did not miss on either one of those. And then the rest was gravy. The rest of this draft class was gravy. And there were a lot of hits. And 1, 2, 3, 4-ish, 4-ish X's, misses. So good stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, also, just so we know, because the NFL announced how much each guy is going to cost, not only for 5th-year options, but for the restricted free agents. And so with Darius Washington, the Ravens are going to have a little decision to make. Okay, so as an undrafted free agent from back in the day, they can use the free agent tender on him, which would only be $3.2 million, with the right to match. You know, if somebody else comes out and makes a deal with them, the Ravens have the right to match and keep him anyway. But they wouldn't get anything in return if somebody else steals him away. So do you go ahead and use that smaller cap number and risk that nobody's going to try to give him a long-term deal and steal him away? Or you have to jump all the way up to a 2nd round tender, which means if a team steals him away with another deal and you choose not to match, then you would get a 2nd round pick out of him. But nobody's really going to nobody's going to realistically give up a 2nd rounder for Darius Washington as good as a year he just had. A 2nd rounder, not happening. And so you would have more security that you keep him here, but then he would cost 5.5 against the cap next year. So, as Brian McFarland points out, the best result, get an extension done, so you don't even have to use the tender.
Yeah, well, he's deserving of that. I know they have a lot of priorities when it comes to team building, but this is a player. Where would they have been without him last year? I mean,
we saw where they would have been, number 32 the entire year instead of half of the year.
That's true. We had a good look at it through the first 10 weeks.
Yeah, we did. And it was not fun to look at. We were all looking away.
We were. We certainly were.
And that's not to underestimate what Kyle Hamilton's move did. Obviously, that was massive too, but he needed a partner in crime, and Darius Washington fit the bill.
Favorite part about his game, though, for Darius, the tenacity, his timing, his precision, and the tenacity of how he lays a hit stick down is so much fun to watch. I can think of a couple that come to mind. Pat Freiermuth in the Pittsburgh game, Joe Mixon in the Houston game. These are players that are either bigger or taller than him, and he didn't care. I love that about him. And he's got the undrafted chip on his shoulder. He played at TCU, if memory serves. He's a homegrown Raven in a sense. I mean, even though they didn't draft him, they brought him in. He's been in the system. He's dealt with his fair share of injuries. I believe it was a serious chest injury the year prior, where we could have seen what we saw this past season then, but he wasn't available. And I just think he epitomizes the undrafted pride that they look for, and they've had so much success for throughout their time as an organization. They pride themselves on these guys, finding them needle in a haystack, and he certainly paid dividends for them this year.
Before we completely move on from these younger guys that are looking for bigger contracts, Rave Kingdom, who we know every single time he's here, is tweeting something about Ben Cleveland, who is on his way out. So Rave's going to have to find a new thing to tweet about.
Hey, Rave, or are you upset with me that I didn't ask Harbaugh about him at the press conference last week?
Yeah, seriously. But Ray puts in a super chat saying, to have Fa'alele as a green circle is nasty work. Stop it. Worst pick. Are you okay? Stay off the weed. Hashtag Ben Cleveland.
Thank you, Rave. Great to hear from you, brother. Appreciate you.
All right. Should we go on to the next topic here?
I think so, yeah, because this was a player that we spent at
Couple
least an
minutes.
episode or two,
Yeah.
meaning a chunk of an episode or two speaking about. And then I was kind of tasked with whenever I, landed an insider or a guest last week in Indy, at least bringing him up. And that's exactly what we did as it relates to Deebo Samuel. And as we now know, he is coming to the Baltimore area to join the Washington Commanders. The 49ers traded him to the Commanders for a 5th-round pick. Washington's taking on the remainder of Deebo's contract and paying his full salary for 2025, which is over $17 million. Sarah, Deebo is got to be a believer in Jaden Daniels, and how could you not be after what he did his rookie season? Washington clearly was willing to bring him in, being that they not only gave draft compensation away, but they're investing in him. He's been banged up a little bit, but we know what he's put on tape. He's a unicorn. He certainly was for San Francisco. He was given permission to seek a trade, and he got exactly that at the end of last week.
He sure did. 49ers obviously only had to give up a 5th rounder to get him, which I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying, wait, why couldn't the Ravens do that? Yada, yada, yada. Of course the Ravens could have done that. So a couple of things on this. Of course the Ravens would have given up the draft asset of a 5th rounder. Can we just point out, though, guys, this is more like somebody else was saying Marlon Humphrey for a 2nd-round pick I saw in the chat earlier. There's such a disconnect between what fans think draft picks are worth and what all GMs, not just Derek DaCosta, think that veterans are worth. Like, the name, you've seen him do a bunch of stuff, but GMs want the cheap labor. They need it because they can only pay top dollar for maybe 4 or 5 guys. And maybe in a year that they're going all in, they could pay maybe 6. Okay, but you're not paying everybody top dollar all the time. And so they value high level playing on their rookie contracts. All GMs are that way. Like if Deebo Samuel is only getting a 5th rounder, I promise Marlon Humphrey isn't getting a 2nd, which is why when people are like, oh, give up basically the entire draft for Myles Garrett. Yeah, Myles Garrett is a game wrecker, but I promise you they would get laughed out of the NFL if they gave up essentially your first 3/4 of your draft assets in a single year. This is what veterans more typically go for. Okay, unless you're like a young quarterback or a young pass rusher that can game wreck. Okay, that's number one. So yes, the Ravens could have given up a 5th rounder. However, the Ravens do not have $18 million under the cap, and plus what they have to play still on the books. It's just not there. It's not there. Even with finagling, it's just not there. Sorry. I know. So you got people saying the salary cap is cap. We're going to have a deeper discussion about this in just 1 minute, so I won't go too deep into it.
The salary cap is cap.
So funny. The cap is cap is cap. Did you follow that?
Yes.
Okay.
The whole way.
Meanwhile, I'm so glad you followed me there. Ian Rappaport, this is the other wide receiver we've actually talked about, I think, a couple times throughout different episodes, couple minutes each. Ian Rappaport on Davante Adams. Sources, the Jets are now taking calls on star wide receiver Davante Adams, open to trading him prior to the start of the league year. Oh, I bet they are. Would love to trade him for something when his cap number is $38.2 million. Almost $40 million. Rappaport goes on to say, if they can't get a deal, they are expected to release Adams, who could rejoin quarterback Aaron Rodgers with the new team.
Did you see the new team that's starting to garner some attention for Aaron and his services?
Boy, I'm sure there's like a million here. Okay, we've talked about the Raiders. We've talked about the Steelers.
Yep.
Who else needs a quarterback? I mean, a few people. Don't tell me the Browns.
Nope.
So it's not
like
AFC or NFC.
NFC.
NFC. Cardinals. They still got their guy, Murray.
They got Kyler. It'd be a hop, skip, and a jump. He doesn't live there in the offseason, but from where his former team is, it'd be a hop, skip, and a jump. That's a hint.
Minnesota?
Oh, meaning, sorry, where he spent the last 2 years.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about New York. The Giants?
The New York Football Giants. Now, here's the thing. Everybody in the chat's throwing out teams that need quarterbacks, right? And hey, maybe you have seen reports, but I'm talking about at the end of last week when it became clear about some other situations at the combine. I started to see credible tweets related to the Giants doing due diligence on Aaron. So that's all I'm saying.
Well, we're going to find out how, well, again, remember that quote, that clip we've played a few times when he was on with Amber Theo Harris in Las Vegas, where he said he would take less yardage, like 800 yards. Devontae would take less yardage in order to play with Lamar. I don't know if he would take less money, but he was ready to take less production if he could play with Lamar. Would he take less production and less money? Like, what's he going to do if he followed Aaron to, say, the Giants? What are they going to do over there? It's not going to be much better than the Jets. Come on, dude. Take a pay cut and come to the Ravens. Now, everybody hates it when we ask players to take pay cuts. You should be asking the owners. I get it. This is all kind of in fun. But we all know the system that we're working within. And he's not going to have much longer. He's got to go. If he wants to win, he cannot go to the Giants.
I was going to say, if he wants to win, he should feel on the clock.
Yes.
He's definitely worthy of continuing to make good money in this league based on what he's put on film. So the question becomes, how much are you going to put your money where your mouth either is or was, because of that clip that you just referenced.
And listen, if he goes and gets another big payday, I won't hate him. And if he doesn't come to the Ravens, yes, go to the Giants. That's a great place for you to land. If it's not the Ravens, Giants, Devontae, they're going to turn it around. Go on over there with Aaron.
Amazing. Dre Dog hit us with a super chat before we shift gears, and this was just related to Debo. And Dre has been on record for thinking this way about the organization when it comes to Lamar. When you see things like this with Debo, it really shines a light on how the Ravens completely squandered Lamar's rookie deal. The Ravens held Lamar back. Appreciate the super chat, Dre Dog. You referenced a minute ago a cap conversation.
Well, hold on a second before we get to that. Yeah. Just a couple more wide receiver notes since we're talking about wide receivers. Let's talk about the Ravens wide receivers. 33rd team put out this graphic and stat. The highest percent of receptions for a first down or touchdown. There's Rashad Bateman, number one. 77.8% of his receptions went for a first down or a touchdown. As the 33rd team said, professional chain movers.
Yeah.
Listen, I was definitely this time last year nervous because he'd been injured so often. I for sure wanted insurance because of how often he has been injured, and he just hadn't hit the first round draft status that he had. But my goodness, last year showing how healthy he was, he's an underrated wide receiver when healthy. That's for sure.
Well, what'd you call him you called him the best bargain in the NFL?
He's the best value. He might be the best value at wide receiver in the entire NFL. Outside, I'm talking veteran on a veteran contract.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. They got out in front of it. It was a surprise. Even Rashad himself referred to it as a surprise. Right. What was it? April of last year? It was a late one. It was post-draft. I know that.
Yeah, so. He was happy. He kept saying, "I'm happy the Ravens took a chance on me." He was very happy. Yeah. Anyway, and I know that
they got to be happy after this year.
Sure.
You know.
And obviously, wide receiver separation stats is obviously partially what the receiver's doing. It's also what the quarterback is doing, and how long they're able to buy time in this kind of and that. But just this 2024 wide receiver chart on their ability to separate by coverage. So when it comes to zone coverage and how much Rashad Bateman separates, he is second in the NFL. Right there in zone coverage, which is your vertical line. Zay Flowers is first And he's first by a lot against man coverage. Mike Evans, the second on that list. And then if you look at these two guys, Deebo Samuel and Devontae Adams, Deebo's looking real bad. He's in that left bottom quadrant, which means he's among the bottom of the league for both zone and man. And then Devontae, at least he's on the bottom for zone, but doing a little bit better against man. So when you go out and you know these names because they've produced so much in the past, this is why people don't give up a lot of draft picks for veterans, because I mean you just fall off. And again, Lamar Jackson helps this stat for sure. But you still got to give your credit and your flowers to Rashad and Zay.
Way out in front.
Woo.
Zay Flowers. What a world. 2025 world. 2 Ravens wideouts in the upper right quadrant of a place that you want to be when it comes to separation.
Okay, now let's change gears to this salary cap discussion. Okay, so 1057 The Fan, who, just to be clear, I love it, was just on their morning show. What was it? Thursday, Friday, something like that. Was on there last week. Had a great time with Rob Long and those guys on the morning crew. But in a later, I think he's in the afternoon show with Jason La Canfora, Ken Wiseman, and Tim. How do you say Tim's last name?
Tim's my guy, Tim Barbalace. We came into radio together in Baltimore.
Okay.
So it's Tim, Ken, and Jason. They do Inside Access. Inside Access.
Okay.
And that is the afternoon drive time show. Yep.
Okay, gotcha. Well, last Friday, I believe, they were going through an exercise of comparing cash spending. Okay, different from cap spending. So obviously, you have to have money work underneath a cap, but you can finagle it year to year by restructuring and this and that. And so at the end, so really a lot of people like to look at how much cash you're actually putting out every year. But that's kind of finagled too. That's what people don't understand. And I remember listening to Dick Cass, former Ravens president. He talked about how what you want to do is check over a 5-year period how much cash people are spending, and then you get a pretty good idea. And then they are required, I think teams are required to spend like something like 77 or 78% of the cap and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so Jason La Canfora grabbed some numbers from Spot Rack, which doesn't seem to be very accurate. And he went off on the Ravens. And I bring this up because I heard it last week and I was like, this isn't quite right, but whatever, it's radio and kind of move on. But then a lot of the guys at Russell Street Report started pushing back on what Jason La Canfora had said. So why don't we start with this? I'll start with his claims about cash spending, about the Ravens and some other teams. We might pause it here and there, but here's what he had to say and what people are kind of debating on Twitter over the weekend.
We always strive to keep it real around here. So in light of the latest round of grousing and grumbling about a salary cap that is completely malleable and flexible, and one in which if you're willing to spend, you can manipulate in a bunch of different ways. Instead, Eric DeCosta is using it as an opportunity to tamp down expectations, to hide behind the salary cap, to let you know that his owner, who he loves so much, is really, really trying to win here. And boy, if it wasn't for this dastardly salary cap or some of these rules, well, we'd win every year because we're so damn committed. And we already spend as much as we possibly could. That's what they try to tell you. Well, guess who was 27th in the NFL in actual dollars spent on payroll last year? Your Baltimore Ravens. That's 27th out of 32. I'm sorry. The Philadelphia Eagles, who I think they won it all. Remind me, am I wrong about that?
They won it all.
Yeah. They spent $65 million more than Silent Steve Bisciotti last year. $65 million more. Yet you don't really hear them complaining and crying about the salary cap the way the Baltimore Ravens do. And I would just let you know that Eric DeCosta's boss, he was second in the NFL in spending in 2023. In 2022, they were 21st. In 2021, they were 11th. In 2020, they were 16th. In 2019, they were 17th in spending. In 2018, they were dead last, 32nd. In 2017, they were 23rd. So, yet they have the temerity to cry about a salary cap and to cry about we're so smart for our own good and we've got all these first world problems. We can't pay everybody. No, you could. You choose not to. Last year, the Philadelphia Eagles had 5 players who made $21 million or more. The Ravens had 2. Any wiggle room there? Couldn't have added somebody at the deadline?
They tried, Jason.
Yeah. Philadelphia Eagles had 9 players make $15 million or more. The Ravens had 3. So these are facts. If you don't believe me, just go to Spotrac.com.
Okay. So that's kind of the first part there, Bobby, where he spouted off a lot of numbers. So over the weekend, Brian McFarland, and there's just not. There's nobody more reliable when it comes to the Ravens cap than Brian McFarland. I mean, I'm telling you, even people inside the building are like, holy crap, he's good. Like, he can maybe get a job inside there. Okay.
Lawyer by day. Right,
yes.
just be clear. Lawyer by day. Ravens salary cap, unaffiliated, we might add, expert by night.
Yes.
And friend of the show, and a great dude. Super, super talented.
And he doesn't get his information from Spot Rack. Okay. Spot Rack, sometimes we'll bring him on. We're in a pinch. Let me give you a general idea of somebody's contract. Okay. But if you want solid numbers, Brian's getting them. Like, they are as solid as they can become. Okay. So that tweet over here where they tweeted out this saying the Eagles spent $65 million more than Baltimore last year. And then he says without zero complaints. So I'm going to get to that in just a minute too. So he quote retweets that and says this, and Brian's not a confrontational guy. He just wants to set the record straight. And he says there's so much that is inaccurate here and refuted by actual NFLPA data. He says the Ravens were second in cash spending in 2023. And Jason did admit that in that clip. He got that part right. But they were 5th in 2022. And they were 3rd for 2021, 2022, and 2023 together, outspending Philadelphia each of those years. And you can see it right here, Bobby. So to the right, you can see a spreadsheet of how much the Ravens spent from 2021 to 2023. And they were indeed 3rd over those 3 years. And Philadelphia was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in the top 10. So nothing that, Philadelphia is in the top 10. That's a good amount of spending. Top 10 is perfectly fine if I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. But the Ravens were number 3 over those 3 years and number 2 in 2023. Brian goes on to say, yes, they were down in 2024, but cash spending is cyclical. And it totally is. Again, I cannot tell you how many times I was like educated while I was in that building where Dick Cass would talk about, you got to look at a 5-year cycle of cash spending. Because yes, you can finagle the salary cap, but the salary cap isn't fake, which is what people want you to say or want you to believe. And so in Ravens fans' minds, or maybe not everybody, but the person that just posted in our chat, the cap is cap. Well, within a 5-year period, you can fluff it up and play with it. But over time, everybody gets back to kind of neutral. And so you may complain, well, why don't the Ravens take a shot? Well, that's what they did from Eric DeCosta's standpoint in 2023 when he's 2nd in cash spending. And he had just signed Lamar Jackson. But at some point you have to refill the bank accounts, if you will, the cash accounts. And so so Brian says they were down in 2024. So I reached out to Brian. I said, do you have the 2024 numbers? Because he posted receipts, by the way, of the NFLPA putting out everybody's cap spending. And what Jason was saying about being number 27 and 22 or in the late 20s here, that's not true according to NFLPA records. And again, Spot Rack tries, but they're doing it based off of, and they'll say it at the bottom of their things, this is based off of reporting, the best reporting we can find, this and that. But when you're getting it from the Players Association, who knows how much each player is actually getting paid, right? Then it paints 2 wildly different pictures than the one that Jason just put together. And according to the NFLPA, top 3 over the last 3 years in spending. According to Jason, outside of 2023, you're in the bottom 20s. 2 wildly different sets of numbers here. And he said it. He said it. You can go to Spot Rack and look it up, but Spot Rack isn't that as accurate as the NFLPA. And obviously in this case, nowhere near as close. And I'm trying to think here. Yeah, so here it is. Here he pulled some receipts. Here they were. I just took 2023 right here. Ravens are clearly number 2. The only team that beat them were the Texans. And by the way, the Ravens beat the Texans in 2023 in the divisional round. And you can go and look at it. The cash spending each year doesn't correlate with winning all the time. What more correlates? People being smart with the cap over time and drafting well. That, if you can go look at the numbers, that's what correlates, not the cash spending year in and year out. So I asked Brian, what's the 2024 spending? He said NFLPA hasn't put it out yet. He says they usually do it around this time. He goes, but sometimes they don't do it, but they have been more consistent over the last 3 years. So then after putting out those numbers, unless you have any, do you have any reaction yet, Bobby? Because then
I have a lot.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a lot, but I think you're on a roll.
Are you sure? Because I'm going to change it to what he says about Steve Bisciotti. So I don't know if you have anything yet, if you want to wait.
It'll all be perfect on the back end.
Okay.
It'll summarize what I think has been the demise of Jason as a local broadcaster.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, moving on, he starts to compare who he thinks, which owners are more committed to winning than Steve Bisciotti.
Players love Steve.
They do.
Because the facility's great and all that.
They think he's committed to winning.
Well, these are the teams that I think have owners that are more committed to winning than Steve Bisciotti in terms of how they fasten their rosters, how they're willing to take on payroll, how quickly they are to extend their own players. Philadelphia Eagles, certainly more committed than the Baltimore Ravens. He spent $65 million in them last year.
Yeah, Howie's very aggressive.
Kansas City?
Yeah.
Does anybody want to argue that? Do you want to have that argument?
Is there an argument?
No. Buffalo Bills? I don't like Jed York. I got a lot of issues with him. I think he's a little bit of a turd. But, they've spent money. They've gone for it there. Who went and got Chase Young and took that on at the deadline?
Yeah.
Cleveland. We can say about how misguided he is. He spent $300 million or more like 3 straight years.
Like a moron, though. How many wins he got to show for it?
But was he going for it?
Taking swings. I don't know what he's going for.
Was he all in? Was he committed?
He should be committed.
Did they have Myles Garrett and still get Darius Smith?
Are you saying there's a world?
Did they keep their own guys?
Time out. Are you saying there's a world where you think that Haslam's a more committed to winning owner than Steve Bisciotti?
I think we're living in that world.
I don't.
So a couple of things. Cleveland, if he's touting that Steve Bisciotti should be more like Cleveland, I'm not there. And it just goes to show again that if Cleveland was indeed spending the most, and again, I don't know if Jason's numbers are correct. He definitely weren't on the Ravens. But if Cleveland is spending the most, yeah, don't be like Cleveland. Then he talked about how Jed York went out and got Chase Young. What has he done? Why would you give examples that it's like it just shows that you shouldn't just throw around money? Like the Ravens went out and got Kyle Van Noy for way cheaper and he played much better. And people poo-poo that kind of stuff because it's like, oh, well, he's old. And the Ravens went and found a bargain and then he put up double-digit stats. Chase Young didn't do any of that. Then the last one because he keeps comparing him throughout the two, not only that segment, but they went to commercial, they came back and they did a whole segment on the Philadelphia Eagles. And they kept talking about how Howie does things. Bobby, we pointed this out last week at the Combine. I went back and I listened to Howie Roseman, GM of the Eagles, his entire press conference at the Combine. And do you know what I heard? I heard a GM that sounds a lot like Eric DeCosta. A lot like Eric DeCosta. Zach Berman over in Philadelphia summed up some of the things that Howie said. Said Howie Roseman asked fans for patience while the Eagles put together the roster this offseason. Quote, it may look different. Some of the moves that we may have to make here may not be what are necessarily on other people's minds. It's probably not going to look like maybe the conventional wisdom thinks it should look. I would just ask our fans to just have patience throughout the offseason. The offseason doesn't stop in free agency. The offseason doesn't stop in the draft, meaning I think he's going to be looking for veteran bargains, closer to training camp, just like the Ravens often do. And they're going to probably have to do more cuts than they just did with Darius Slay. And so, yes, the Eagles took a big swing, spending a lot of money last year, and they hit. But the Ravens, spending the second most the year before, went all the way to the AFC Championship game. And can you blame Eric DeCosta for what happened in that AFC Championship game, or do you blame the coaches? I blame the coaches for abandoning the run. And then Eric DeCosta didn't spend as much last year because he was in the top 3 for the previous 3 years. And at some point, you can't keep being the highest cash-paying GM. And that's what Howie Roseman is saying here. Like, listen, we just went all the way to the Super Bowl. But now, and by the way, this wasn't even there, I went and listened to his whole press conference. And Howie said, yeah, we could pay guys, but it's got to come from somewhere else. Basically saying, you got to rob Peter to pay Paul. And he goes, hey, like, money has to come from somewhere. It's always he sounded exactly like Eric DeCosta. So he took his swing and he hit. Eric DeCosta took his swing and they got knocked out in the AFC Championship game. So, and then this last year, it was turnovers galore. Can you put that on Eric DeCosta? I don't think so. And so I just don't agree with the comparisons that Jason La Canfora is making. I definitely don't agree with him saying that Steve Bisciotti isn't committed. When I worked there, we always had year-end reviews, and they kind of showed us the overall view of Steve Bisciotti's goal is to basically break even every year because he's independently wealthy. He's not making his money from the Ravens. He could go underneath the salary cap every year. He doesn't. He's in the top 5 of spending most years. Brian McFarland put out other stuff, showed that the Ravens are in the top 10 going all the way back from 2000, I think it was 13 to 17, something like that. Just like the Eagles in the top 10. And so people try to perpetuate the idea that the Ravens are cheap. That is a lie. Whether you look at it from a cap perspective or a cash perspective. Cap perspective, they're always going to cap. And in the cash perspective, they're cyclical, just like everybody else. The Eagles will now hit their low cycle. Maybe their draft picks will be able to smooth it over. The Ravens hit their low cycle last year. Seemed to be okay until they turned the ball over repeatedly in the division game. Whatever metric you want to use, the Ravens are not cheap. If you want to be specific, they're cheap at paying veteran wide receivers. And if you want to be specific, they are cheap at paying other people's free agents. It seems cheap because you don't like that they're paying their own. Those are the two places where they don't spend a lot of money, but overall, they are not even close to being a cheap organization.
Seems awfully personal for Jason La Canfora, don't you think?
There's a lot of
there. If you listen to the tone of his voice, the way that he delivers it, I catch a lot of their show. And Tim and I are good friends. I've had pleasant interactions with Jason. Know Ken very well from my radio days. Speaking of perpetual, it's perpetual negativity from Jason.
I don't listen to it a lot, but that's what I hear.
It's unbelievably, relentlessly negative. And it feels personal. And you want to know why? Because it is. He has a personal vendetta, a personal grudge against Eric DeCosta. That then extends up to Ravens ownership. Clearly, you heard that in the second segment related to Steve Bisciotti. And so where I was going a few minutes ago was that to me reeks of bitterness, of personal, deep-seated stuff from Jason's perspective to the front office, and it comes across as curmudgeonly, it comes across as doom and gloom, and it comes across as just something that is hard to listen to with a full understanding that he's given it to you straight, objectively. We know this guy's been at the height. This guy's been at national levels. He's been to new heights when it comes to this profession as the former, it was CBS, correct? It was NFL Network and CBS?
He did NFL Network and CBS, yes.
Okay, this was before my time in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm. And I first got to know him as an NFL insider, kind of like Ian Rappaport or Garofalo or those kind of guys.
Yeah. And hey, I'm sure you had pleasant interactions. I've had pleasant interactions with him. When he gets in his on-air demeanor in his post-national days, and he's been in the local market with 105.7 The Fan for at least the last, oh gosh, it might be 5 years now, but it's been several years. It comes across as unrelenting. And I think that's really damaged his reputation here in town. I do. So those are
Why
my
is
thoughts
there
on
a
it.
personal vendetta?
I probably should keep that off the air from what
okay.
I've been told.
Okay.
But it's my understanding from multiple credible sources that there is a personal vendetta,
Okay.
and it very much affects the way that he broadcasts and the
Gotcha.
way that he puts together those types of like, I think doom and gloom is kind of the right way to put it. You know, there's so many different, there's probably several other adjectives that come to mind for it, but yeah, I won't air that dirty laundry, I don't think.
That's probably a good
So,
choice.
yeah.
Real thing, or real quick, I was checking out the chat as you were giving your take on it. Habitual line stepper thinks he's doing something here with his condescending laughing emojis when I said the Ravens are cheap at one place and not another. So he's like, that means they're cheap. No. It's exactly what Howie Roseman said it with the Eagles. You can pay a lot here, but all you're doing is taking it from here. The Ravens spend in the top of the NFL, as we just proved with these numbers. But they make choices of where they want to spend their money. They want to spend their money at quarterback. They spend their money, when they have a good one, at pass rusher. They'll spend their money in the secondary. They'll spend their money in the offensive line. They'll spend their money on the defensive line. But they choose not to do it at wide receiver. They also choose to spend money on their own people. Lamar Jackson. Roquan Smith is one of the few examples where they went out and got an outside guy. Okay. It's rare that they do it, but they have done it. Ronnie Stanley, Marlon Humphrey. We can go on and did it back in the day. Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs. Okay. So point being, just because they don't spend at wide receiver doesn't mean that they're not spending overall. And people like habitual line stepper would have a better sound argument if you just pinpointed it accurately. You want them to spend more on outside people, if that's the case, and you want them to spend more at wide receiver, that's fine. But just know it's going to come from somewhere else. But because overall, they're spending to the limits. They're spending to the limits. Any other super chats to get to here?
Yes, super chats, then a couple of closing quick hits.
Yep.
Richard, what's up, brother? Asmodeus says, I want a similar gamble for Ajabo. Last year was his first year back after injury. I think he's my low-key breakout player this year. Richard, where does the confidence come from there? I wish I shared your optimism. And Massey,
maybe he'll be a Rashad Bateman, Bobby, where last year at this time we were nervous, being like, well, when has he done it? You know, get more depth. And then he figured it out. Oh, I don't know. Maybe.
All right.
What is this, Massey?
Massey.
Thank you for your donation. Massey says, Bobby and Sarah, off topic. Is Stefanski a good coach? I'm not sure what to make of him. On one hand, impressive. He lasted so long at a bad Browns franchise. On the other hand, he had a stacked team when he arrived. Media is split on him. I'm not going to pretend that I know a lot about Stefanski from the outside looking in. I feel like he seems like a solid coach. When you say he had a stacked team, tell me what year he came in. I'll just say this. He's got a quarterback in Deshaun Watson that is taking up the vast majority of their cap space. And maybe in the beginning years, he wasn't because of the way they structured it. But when you have a quarterback that's not playing, taking up that much money, and it's fully guaranteed money, and you can't move on from him, that alone makes you think, that's not the coach's fault, So he has to get players that are cheaper, but the quarterback that they're paying isn't playing.
I'll take a step
he seems like a solid dude
that.
from the outside looking in.
I'll take a step further than that, because that to me is the biggest umbrella of them all, right? The limitations that he's been dealt with. It wasn't his decision to pay Sean. That was an ownership decision, obviously. First of all, Stefanski's a 2-time coach of the year. And if you go back to 2023, when Deshaun went down, he kept things in order when one Joe Flacco came in and led him to the postseason, Sarah. So I think a lot of Kevin Stefanski, and you wonder if it weren't for such high dysfunction, which is pretty much a given in that organization, what feels like on an annual basis, you wonder how much else he would have accomplished over these last couple of years, particularly if it weren't for what you just referenced, the quarterback situation, the saga that they've been involved in. So, yeah, I'm a fan of his.
One more just came in from Isaiah. You got this one?
What's up, Isaiah? Good to see you both. I just want more Darkness Falls games.
Is that the blackout jerseys? Is that what he's saying?
Is it?
I don't know.
What's Darkness Falls?
Should we know this?
You're right. No, I thought it was something rises. Isn't it Darkness Rises when the Ravens wear that? That's what's in their grip. That's
so
what's
maybe
in their
it's not that.
graphics. This is where you and I are just like, all right, somebody help us out in chat. If this isn't jersey related, somebody help us out. We don't watch series. We don't watch movies. At least I don't.
Neither of us were both we're like all Ravens and then all life, just running around.
It was a 2003 film starring Chaney Clay and Emma Caulfield. A vengeful spirit has taken the form of the Tooth Fairy to exact vengeance on the town that lynched her 150 years earlier.
Oh, that's brutal.
A 2003 film.
All right. People are saying it's the blackout, all black uniforms. That's what I originally thought. I would love more of those. The NFL has a lot of rules about what jersey you can wear and when. It's very interesting.
Oh, and I had to hold myself accountable on that because I didn't know that going into the postseason. And when they went in the traditional one for the divisional round game, and I was hoping for the not that I care that much, but I was thinking, oh man, Buffalo night game, January, all black, but they didn't even have that up as an option. Okay, Isaiah, just so you know, Darkness Rises. You got us down a little bit of a tangent here because we were trying to decipher what it was that you meant, but we appreciate the super chat, and that brings us to quick hits. And I had a chance to hang out with Garrett Downing at times last week, and I know he was busting his butt, Sarah, with a lot of these prospects, and one of them is a stud safety who, after what he put forth last week, I just don't know how he's going to be available at 27. Nick Emanwari, 6'3", 225, as Garrett writes here, is one of the biggest defensive backs in the draft, and he said it would be, quote, scary for the league if he landed in Baltimore playing alongside Kyle Hamilton. I know you love the sound of that.
Well, I wouldn't hate it, but do I want him to be the 27th draft pick? Like, ideally, we're looking at a pass rusher there, right? I want that game-wrecking pass rusher, or if they don't re-sign Ronnie Stanley. But I'm not pounding the table for another safety. But if this were to happen, yeah, it could be pretty scary in the back end for the league, to his point. Okay, what's Kyle's measurables? If Nick is 6'3", 225?
I was going to say, there's a reason why they're drawing some comparisons here. Kyle's taller than him, but this is a physical.
Kyle's 6'4", 220.
Yeah.
So this dude's tall, about an inch shorter, but 5 pounds heavier.
Yeah, Nick. But here's the thing, Sarah. He ran a 4.38.
He was fast. I watched it.
I don't have Kyle's number from 3 years ago in front of me, but he didn't run a 4.3.
Well, it's why he fell to 14.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he jokes about it to this day.
Yeah.
So he also, Nick posted a 43-inch vertical jump and 11.6 broad jump. So this is a special player. I just don't think because of what he did last week in Indy, I don't think he's going to be available.
You think he'll be there at 27 just because he's a safety? Probably not.
Yeah,
Also, take a look at this. Last week, we showed Shamar Stewart's relative athletic score, his RAS.
Yeah.
And it was like a 10. And there hadn't been a 10 forever. Oh, until Nick came around the next day. Here's what's funny. He had a 10 at free safety, but he also hit a 10 at strong safety. And what's funny is he would have hit a 10 at wide receiver, according to Kent, who created this metric. He would have been just under a 10 at cornerback. He hits a 9.87 at linebacker. I mean, again, I'm not campaigning for any single person at this point in the draft, but would I hate him and Kyle Hamilton as a duo on the back end? No, I would not.
I think the two biggest winners from last week, Eamon Worry and Stewart.
Yeah, and it's funny because those are the two guys that have been drafted who have mocked the Ravens the most, at least heading into the combine. We'll see where they hit after the combine. And sounds to me, but both their draft stock is going up.
Just the sheer amount of chatter for each of those guys that based on what they posted. Yeah, it is funny how they're at least there's been some chatter because of different mocks and reports and so on and so forth.
Meanwhile, Bobby, if we want to get a look at what Ronnie Stanley may cost, remember John Harbaugh said that the Ravens will probably keep him, and Eric DeCosta said it's not 100%, but he's feeling pretty good that a deal will get done. Could it look like the contract that the Rams just signed to their left tackle in Alaric Jackson? They signed him to a 3-year deal at $57 million total, so just under $20 million per year. The going rate of offensive tackles that can protect your quarterback. So again, people are going to want to see the Ravens signing outside free agents, but there's not going to be a better left tackle on the market. Maybe there's a better left tackle in the draft, but the Ravens aren't going to get him late in the first round. So looking like just under $20 million per year for Ronnie, unless he wants to take less and stick around in Baltimore anyway.
Keep in mind, too, there is a slight age difference between the two players. Alaric is 26, and Ronnie, I believe, is 31. Let's see. I think
as you look it up, though, it is a 3-year deal, though.
Yes, 3 years.
If they really believed in their younger guy, they would have locked him up for 5.
Sure. Ronnie turns 31 on the 18th of this month.
There you go. Last quick hit. This one's kind of funny. So you know how Dov Kleiman, he's one of those, he aggregates a lot. We aggregate a lot on this show and react to it. He grabbed this, I don't know why this is so funny to me. He grabbed this graphic from, I don't know who this is, Dazen L NFL. I don't know who it is. But he grabs the graphic, and this NFL account put together their view of the top 10 quarterbacks. And they have Lamar Jackson at number 1, Josh Allen number 2, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, Patrick Mahomes. Those are the top 5. And they have a photo of Lamar right there, Bobby. And he's the only quarterback that has an actual face on this graphic. And there he is with his Ravens uniform. The only problem is that when they put him in the number 1 position, they have him as a San Francisco 49er. And one of the most entertaining things on X these days are the community notes. And so they had a community note, Dov, and say, Lamar Jackson plays for the Baltimore Ravens, not the San Francisco 49ers. And then they link to his Wikipedia page. It happens to all of us. It happens to all of us. But that one's a funny oversight.
The interesting thing about Dov is that you have obviously slews and slews of aggregators across all professional sports, really across all industries at this point on X and other social media accounts. And there is definitely, you're right. I think there is a certain level of aggregating that we do on a daily basis. You have honest aggregators and dishonest aggregators, and he is the latter of those two. And his track record.
In this case, I don't think he's being dishonest. He just grabbed a graphic and didn't think too much of it. Yeah.
Not this case, but I'm just not a fan of his for his track record.
I feel like you've gone after him a few times, haven't you, on Twitter?
For sure.
Yeah.
So let's see if we're caught up to speed on Super Chats. Adit gets us to the finish line here. JLC is acting like a jealous girlfriend of the Ravens and Orioles that can't get over a breakup, even though they were told it's over. Adit talking about Jason Lockenfora, who we spent a couple minutes talking about just a short while ago, which brings us to our patrons on our way out of here. Christopher Washington and Brian Walters, we appreciate you both for believing in what we're building. Thank you for being members of the Vault Patreon community. If you guys are interested in doing the same and joining that group this offseason, we would love for you to do so. You can join it for as little as $1.99, or you can get to that second level tier for a monthly shout out at the $4.99 rate. And Chris, Brian, thank you both. We appreciate all the support. Patreon.com/RavensVault podcast if you're interested in learning more or signing up today. Over 2,700 concurrents, Tila. Paul, happy birthday.
Yeah, Paul.
We have a birthday Vault member here. Paul, how old? Let us know. I think I can ask you that, right? The 3rd of March.
You never know who doesn't like those questions. I don't care when people ask me.
Yeah.
I know you don't
Why am I
care.
not surprised? Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
What else did I need to update you guys on? Looking
Mr.
forward
Florida?
to a fun month.
What's the weather going on down there in sunny Florida?
Oh, you know me. Like the one thing that, and I have so much family down here. I'm going to get you an actual temperature right now, but I have so much family down here. Like over the years, every time I visit, I think it's just natural to be like, oh man, what would life be like here? And I always leave and I think to myself, could I do it in the summer? Like, yeah, you're not landlocked in St. Pete, but boy, could I do a Florida summer as somebody who grew up in upstate New York? I don't know the answer to that question. Today is 75 with a low of 61. Nice. But Sarah, this morning when I left for my workout, it was like 55 on the way out the door. It was perfect. Absolutely perfect. And then by the time you get out of the workout,
75 is my ideal temperature.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
If my family let me, I'd keep my thermostat at 75 all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would actually agree.
They like it more at well, my husband could probably do upper 60s. I can't do that. So we compromise somewhere around like 72.
Yeah, you compromise. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Looks like we got Nick. Nick Raymond is in Sumter County. He says 86 there. Is he in Florida? Never heard of that county. But
I'm 39 outside here in Columbus. So
I was gonna say, as I drove down, and this was a tough drive. Tilly and I drove down. We left just after midnight, technically Sunday morning, but it felt like Saturday night, obviously. And the reason why was I wanted to catch my cousin who I'm staying with for dinner last night because he was traveling to Atlanta for work. So it's funny, I'm here visiting him, but he's not here. I'm in his office right now. Tilly and I have completely taken over it. She probably wants to say a quick little hello.
Oh, she's like right behind you. Hi, Tilly. Oh,
Tilto.
She can't hear me. Hi, Tilly. Let her
here. Hold on. Ready? Let's put you on speaker so you can say hello. All right. Go ahead with that voice.
Tilly. Hi, Tilly. Tilly. No, she's done. She's out.
No, you know what's funny? You can't see because of her coat and the color of it, but her eyes perked up when he said something.
Oh, really? Hi, Tilly.
What are you doing, little girl? You like it here? You want to move to Florida? Find Mrs. Trossett?
Yeah. Do you already have dates set up?
I have been on Hinge for about a week. You know me, I try to get out in front of it so that by the time you get here, there's already like at least.
So while you were in Indy, you had Hinge on St. Pete. Is that what you said you're at in Florida? And maybe while you were in New Orleans, you were already on Hinge in Indy. Is that how it worked?
There was a 2 week gap between. You got to at least give Baltimore a fighting chance.
Okay.
But no, I try to give myself at least a couple days.
Yeah.
And no dates set up yet. But I will tell you that I used chatting, and I used ClassPass this morning, which is when you travel, and it works in Baltimore, and I use it there for Pilates and stuff. It's basically just like a traveler's fitness type membership. So I pulled the app up last night and found an F45 7 a.m.er for today.
Okay.
I was like, oh yeah, I'll go do this. I walk in. The trainer's from York, PA, knows Baltimore really well. The other trainer used to live in D.C. and frequented Fells Point a lot.
Huh.
My partner, who I was in the workout with, is from Chicago and a huge Bears fan. And we just started chatting about just like work, what we do for work. And then the group, and by the way, girls that I didn't talk to in there was so many beautiful, like, I don't want to go too into detail about my fellow classmates, but there were so many beautiful women in this class. And then they invited me to First Friday. Apparently St. Pete has this thing called First Friday down at the pier on Friday afternoon. So they invited me to like come watch bands and hang. And I said yes.
All right.
In a group
Of
setting.
course you did.
Yeah.
Of course you did. You know how some people play well, it's a kids movie. I watch it with my kids where it's like Yes Day. Your life is Yes Day.
I'm in my yes era. Yeah, I'm in my yes era for sure.
Yeah. All right. How long are you gonna be there?
Well, let's just see if anybody's responded for the week.
All right, but I do have a dentist appointment coming up.
Yeah, you gotta.
This time just a cleaning, but I do want to hear if anybody's.
Yep, you gotta go. Yeah, there's a couple. Audrey wrote me last night. She says, "You've never dabbled with a cup of coffee before?"
Oh yeah.
She's cute. But one of her prompts says, this is hilarious. A life goal of mine is the prompt, right? You get to pick that one. And then her answer to that prompt, to have kids, comma, like a lot of kids.
Oh, that's right up your alley.
So I wrote her back. I said, yeah, correct. Lifelong streak for me. No coffee.
What's the definition of a lot of kids?
So I wrote back to her and I said, correct. Lifelong streak, meaning I have not had a sip of coffee.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I go right to the real thing. How many kids we talking?
Yeah.
So I just wrote her. See what she says. I just wrote her back.
You want 4, right?
I would love 4.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you got to talk with your spouse, whoever that's going to be. But as a single man, you would love to have 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. So
four.
We're alive and well here. The dating scene's alive and well in Florida. Going to be here for the majority of the month. Going to bop around from family to family, cousin to cousin, and looking forward to obviously we're going to be locked in next week. The 12th is free agency.
Sorry. I do this to you. I try to get better. I've gotten better for a while, but now Meltrap says he knows somebody that's 23 with 8 kids. There's got to be like duplicates, right? Twins, triplets in there.
Does Mel think he's looking out for me? Does he want me to meet her?
Yeah.
Because I'm all set.
I don't think that's where he was going, but that's funny. That's where he put it. To me, a medium-sized family is 4, but that's because I came from 7. So to me, 7 or more is a big family.
Oh yeah.
4 is mid-size. 1 or 2 is probably average, right? 2 or 3 is average. What's the average in the U.S.? Not worldwide.
It's so subjective, right? It's like
there's statistically though there's a number.
Yeah.
What is the average? I gotta go. What am I doing?
Mel says maybe you should, Bobby. She's a nice girl. I don't doubt that, but I'm good.
Okay, in 2023, the average number of children under 18 per family in the United States was 1.94. So 2 is about average.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All
right. Very important.
All right.
Very important stuff here.
You guys will most certainly.
Oh, Tim Pearson's the oldest of 14.
Wow. Tim, that's
that's a big family.
That's incredible. You guys will get updates. And how many duplicates, Tim? How many twins? How many triplets, if any at all, in that? LH is telling me to give up on the dating apps. Honestly, I think there's a lot to be said about that. I've had a lot of pleasant experience. I met some great people in Indy that was organic, where I went up to that. Oh, Tim says 10 sisters and 3 brothers, but he hasn't given us if
there's any twins or anything.
Yeah. So look, LH, I'm with you on the whole dating app thing. We do have to go, but what I'll say is and I've mentioned this before, I just want to give myself chances. And when you work remotely and you're single full time, it's tough. It's easier said than done. So, but I'm looking forward to this. I think it's gonna be fun.
That's my thing. Is I'm with them on that. I wish that you could ditch the dating apps, but I also realize you work from home like me.
Yep.
And it's just not as many opportunities when you're working from home. You know.
I'm gonna leave you with this. A lot of time to think to myself on the ride down yesterday. And you and I have had a lot of these conversations. I am not ruling out the idea of putting my stuff in storage June 1st and spending the summer bopping around and working remotely and trying out different cities. I've already had a couple preliminary conversations that you don't even know about because it was this morning with my sponsors that are local to Baltimore to see if they would still be receptive to continuing the partnership. And the early answer is yes. So there would have to be some things refined, but that would obviously be a big deciding factor for me.
Would you fly in for home games?
Well, so what I'm pitching to you right now is just for the summer.
Oh, okay.
Like, because my stuff's going to be in storage.
Yeah.
But if for some reason an area like, say, and it's got to be places that I have family, or you would think at least some source of friendship. It doesn't have to be, but it'd be like let's say if it was St. Pete and I really enjoyed this stay, it'd be awesome. I got family all over. So anyway, we're closing on that.
So if you do that, if you put your stuff in storage and you are just traveling the country for love, we got to call it Bobby's Summer of Love.
A lot of people want me to lean into this Bobby Bachelor label that's been given to me.
Oh, for sure you should.
And I would start creating around it. I would start putting up like daily Instagram reels and genuinely sharing without oversharing, which I tend to do, my experiences to see if people would would be able to relate to it. We'll see. We'll see what the second half of 2025 has in store. I'm excited.
Most people have to apply to go on, ABC's The Bachelor. They might have to come and recruit you.
I might walk myself right into it with a couple Instagram reels. Why not?
There you go.
No, it'll be fun. I'm happy to be down here and want to get into a little bit of a routine. And we got free agency next week. So despite me being on the road, do not expect any kind of lapse in content. So we'll close it out there. I know you got a 2:00 commitment. We appreciate you guys. Here's 90 minutes to start off your week. Thank you for being here. Like the video if you haven't already done so. Hit that notification bell so you can be notified when we're dropping our daily content. And hit that sub button coming up on 24,000. So we appreciate you guys very much. For Sarah Ellison and Manta Sleep, I'm Bobby Trossett signing off from this Monday Ravens Lunch Hour live stream. We'll catch you at noon. That's noon Eastern on Tuesday the 4th. Look forward to it. Talk then.